Let's dive right into a seriously fascinating explainer that tackles one of the most pressing, mind-bending questions of our time. When an artificial intelligence gets something perfectly right, does it actually know what it's talking about? I mean, we interact with AI every single day now, right? We basically treat it like a really smart colleague. But today, we're going to take a deeply insightful philosophical look at whether these systems possess actual knowledge or if they're just generating incredibly convincing outputs.
It's an eerie mystery, isn't it? When a machine correctly diagnoses a complex disease or writes a brilliant essay on a super difficult topic, what is actually happening there? Is it demonstrating real, grounded knowledge? Or are we just falling for a highly sophisticated mathematical illusion? We're so used to associating correct answers with intelligence that we just naturally assume an AI that gives us the right answer must know the answer. But, as we're about to see, the philosophy of knowledge demands a way higher standard than that.
So, to solve this mystery, here's our roadmap. We'll start with the AI knowledge illusion, then figure out what knowledge really is, dive into some wild thought experiments with parrots in Chinese rooms, break down 3 levels of output, and finally look at something called the epistemic instrument.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the AI knowledge illusion. It's all about producing versus knowing.
We're going to begin with a very real illusion that tricks us daily. Because AI systems produce outputs that seem so intelligent, we just naturally project human traits onto them. But think about it this way. There is a massive difference between producing a true statement and knowing a true statement. If you punch 2 plus 2 into a calculator and it spits out 4, does the calculator actually know arithmetic? Well, no, of course not. It's just executing a mechanical process to produce a true statement. Or think about a weather model accurately predicting rainfall. The model itself doesn't actually know it's going to rain. We're going to apply this exact same logic to the incredibly complex AI systems we're using today.
Moving on to Section 2, what is knowledge really? Let's talk about the epistemic standard.
To properly interrogate our suspect here, artificial intelligence, we first need to establish what knowledge actually is in the first place, right? I mean, we can't ask if a machine has knowledge if we haven't even defined the term. So we're going to use epistemology as our magnifying glass. Epistemology is simply the specific branch of philosophy dedicated to investigating knowledge itself. It asks how knowledge is justified, how it differs from, say, a lucky guess, and what makes someone capable of possessing it. We'll use this framework to see if AI actually meets the rigorous criteria to be considered a true knower.
This classical framework brings us all the way back to Plato. For centuries, classical epistemology has defined knowledge as justified true belief. Basically, truth alone isn't enough. For me to know that Paris is the capital of France, it obviously must be true that it's the capital, but I also must internally believe that it is, and I must have some justification for that belief. Like, I looked at a map or read a book, rather than just taking a totally wild guess. All 3 of these conditions, truth, belief, and justification, have to be met for human knowledge to occur.
So how exactly does AI stack up against this classical definition? Well, AI is incredibly reliable at generating true outputs. It passes the truth condition with flying colors. But it hits a massive wall at the belief condition. Without a conscious endorsement or a sense of internal conviction, it completely lacks belief. When an AI tells you that water boils at 100 degrees Celsius, it doesn't believe it. It's really just generating a statistically likely linguistic sequence based on its training data. And because it doesn't hold a belief, it literally cannot take responsibility for its answers when you challenge it. Let's jump into Section 3, Parrots and Chinese Rooms. This is where we look at fluency versus actual meaning.
Let's put AI in the hot seat using a couple of heavy-hitting philosophical thought experiments. Take philosopher John R. Seale's famous Chinese room argument. Picture a person who doesn't speak a single word of Chinese sitting inside a closed room. Someone slips them Chinese characters under the door. The person inside uses a massive, detailed rulebook to match those characters with other characters and then passes the results back out. To anyone standing outside, the room speaks fluent Chinese, but the person inside understands absolutely nothing. This brilliantly illustrates that executing a program is not sufficient for intentionality, meaning the ability for a mind to genuinely direct itself toward a subject. AI can shuffle words perfectly without understanding a single one of them.
The absolutely crucial takeaway here is that we have to stop confusing an AI's linguistic fluency with actual semantic comprehension. Just because a chatbot can eloquently summarize Immanuel Kant's philosophy or accurately diagnose a complex medical condition, it doesn't prove it grasps the meaning of its own output.
It's just processing symbols according to rules and statistical weights.
And this brings us to a more modern critique from researchers like Emily Bender and Timnit Gebru, who describe large language models as stochastic parrots. They warn that these massive AI systems are basically imitating communicative competence without any grounded meaning behind it whatsoever. They're essentially just parroting language based on probabilities, that's the stochastic part, which means they risk being dangerously mistaken for agents that actually understand what they're saying.
It's a lot like a literal parrot that repeats a phrase like hello there without actually knowing what a greeting is. An AI can achieve perfect output accuracy without ever achieving epistemic possession. It can say something perfectly true without knowing that it's true. And honestly, this distinction right here is where the illusion of AI intelligence is finally broken.
Let's take this one step further and look at virtue epistemology. Philosopher Linda Zagzebski argues that true knowledge is deeply connected to intellectual virtue. Human knowers genuinely pursue the good of truth, but AI? AI literally does not care about truth. It possesses no intellectual humility, no courage in its inquiries, and it feels absolutely no guilt or doubt when it gets something entirely wrong. Sure, it's designed to optimize for accuracy based on its programming, but optimization is definitely not a genuine love for the truth.
All right, Section 4. 3 levels of output. How should we be categorizing AI?
If AI lacks belief, lacks understanding, and lacks these core intellectual virtues, how on earth should we classify the undeniably brilliant answers it gives us? We need a new framework. The source material proposes this really excellent 3-level system that shows us exactly where AI stops and human cognition begins. Level 1 is data output. That's just producing information without justification. Level 2 is reliable prediction, and this is where AI currently operates, producing statistically reliable, probabilistically justified outcomes. But Level 3 is epistemic knowledge. This requires a subject who actually understands, justifies, and responsibly affirms the truth of an outcome. Current AI usually hits Level 1 or 2, but it fundamentally cannot reach Level 3.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, the epistemic instrument. Let's uncover AI's true role.
Because AI currently plateaus at level 2, we arrive at the grand reveal of our philosophical investigation. What exactly is AI if it's not a knower? We have to reframe AI not as an intelligent knower or an epistemic subject, but as a highly advanced epistemic instrument. Think of a microscope. A microscope is an incredibly powerful tool, right? It reveals things humans literally cannot see with the naked eye. But the microscope doesn't know there are bacteria on a slide. The scientist looking through the microscope is the one who knows. AI works the exact same way. It's an instrument that mediates our access to truth.
AI is a profoundly powerful tool. It can detect patterns in medical imaging way earlier than human clinicians can, and it can assist in modeling insanely complex scientific systems. But as the source makes very clear, AI is knowledge-enabling. It's not knowledge-possessing. It remains a participant in our knowing, a tool in our distributed epistemic networks, but it is not a knower itself. The physician comes to know the diagnosis through the AI-assisted evidence.
Now, you might be wondering, okay, this is all very abstract philosophy. Why does this matter in the real world? It matters immensely. Recognizing AI as an instrument ensures that humans retain all the accountability. If we pretend AI knows things, a corporation or government could just say, well, the algorithm determined this was the best decision, effectively dodging all responsibility. Or think about education. If a student uses AI to write an essay, they might confuse possessing an answer with actually understanding a subject. Knowledge requires internalization, critical reflection, and real epistemic labor. AI can assist in that learning for sure, but it can't replace the learner's labor.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. If we recognize that AI doesn't actually know its outcomes, that means the burden of knowledge falls squarely back on our shoulders. When you use AI to draft an email, analyze data, or make a huge decision, it is just a tool pointing the way. AI challenges us not just to define what artificial intelligence is, but to reclaim our own responsibility as the ultimate knowers. So, if AI is merely an instrument, are you prepared to take full responsibility for the knowledge it helps you produce? Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive into the epistemology of AI. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you next time.